Hey, what's up, guys? It's Tom Clark over at TFCIV MMA, and we are back with a very special guest here, a hometown guy for me here in Chattanooga. We got Torrez Finney. How are you, Torrez?
What's up, Tom? How you doing today, brother? I'm excited to be on this show. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. I always love, I talk with several fighters, UFC, starting to get Bellator, all that kind of stuff, but glad I can get a local guy here and definitely one with big potential. So thanks for coming on.
Well, I'm honored, man. I'm thankful to be amongst some of those guys that, like you say, you've been had an opportunity to interview. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to be one of those guys you can say, "Hey, man, I've had the opportunity to interview Torres before his time," and hopefully, as we'll get to talking about, hopefully this next Saturday be one of my last time on regional scene. So.
I truly think so, looking at your other performances. But so I checked, you're 4-0, all knockouts, all very entertaining fights, but looked like you only had your debut in 2020. Can you kind of tell us how you got into MMA? Were you one of the guys that kind of came in during the pandemic when everything shut down, or how did you start in it, man?
I did. I did. Well, I was one of those guys that started during the pandemic, man. It happened. So I was playing football, college football at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And when I was playing football there, man, I was the starting fullback. I was all conference my red shirt junior year. So I was having a solid season. Then I tore my ACL. And then when I tore my ACL, it was around the time when I was getting ready to come back. Then that's when that spring break hit in like 2020. We didn't know if we was going to have a football season going into the fall. So I'm just a guy that like to stay active. I had started going to a boxing gym, and then some of the guys at the boxing gym that was also training jujitsu at a gym called the Gogi Combatives. It's like, man, with your style, they have MMA at this gym called the Gogi. I really think it will really benefit you. I think it will really work out well for you. So I was like, I'll try it. And I went, and man, I was like, I think this is it for me. And then when COVID hit, I had to go back home, and man, I just went down a freaking I just went dumpster diving straight into nothing but watching MMA every day because everything was closed. So every day I would stay up. I would probably stay up to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up and get back to watching more, watching nothing but MMA. And I was watching tutorials. I was watching all types of video. Then that's when you had the Gaethje versus Ferguson. I was watching that.
Yep.
I was watching all types of stuff. And I was like, I can do this. I think I can do this. And man, and I proved myself right. I could, and I've been blessed ever since, man. And yeah, I got into fighting during the pandemic, and obviously for some people, COVID was bad in certain areas for some people, but obviously it was bad for some people in my life as well. But COVID, in my instance, in this situation, before me becoming an MMA fighter, was a blessing in disguise. So.
Yeah, so several people, not everyone started fighting like yourself, but I think COVID, as far as fan base wise, really drove things into another stratosphere for the UFC,
Yeah.
particularly because they kept shows going while everyone was shut down. And I mean, I've been watching MMA. I think the first show I watched was Lesnar versus Mir. And
Oh,
it only really
yes.
became super popular kind of in that COVID. Like it was popular before Connor brought mainstream, but COVID
Yeah.
really brought it to another level. You had people who had never even heard of mixed martial arts that became
That's,
diehard UFC fans now. So it,
yeah,
it
that's
really
when
go ahead.
that's when you heard. I mean, obviously I knew what was going on beforehand when people be like, man, you do UFC. But you really started to hear more people be like, you do UFC? And I'm like,
Yep,
yeah, no, that's like asking somebody, do you do NFL? Like,
exactly.
but MMA started to be big. And I will say the first ever live card I've ever watched was Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2. I
Yep.
watched that whole main card with some friends. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and then that's when I started like going down the rabbit hole with like I became a fan of Conor McGregor. I was that guy, that casual, like, oh, Conor McGregor, that's awesome.
Yep. Cut
And
out
I'm
there.
just watching and watching, and it would say in every movie he made. But then as time went on, it was more like, oh, well, okay. And like I mean, I still respect Conor for sure, but like he's not. I mean, he's still one of the guys I watch, but he's not like my favorite fighter. At the time when I first got MMA, I was like, oh man, this guy Conor incredible. But now he's no longer like my favorite fighter. I got other fighters I like now. So
And you got very blessed. You got to watch an awesome fight to start.
I
McGregor
did,
versus
yes,
Diaz 2 is a
yes.
banger. I know I've had times in the past where I've tried to tell friends, this is the fight you want to watch. And then we get like a Nagano versus Lewis. So It
Yeah,
doesn't
I
always
know.
pan out, but you really got a good one. And yeah, I
Yeah,
think Conor McGregor really had that effect on a lot of people. I mean, he
he
brought
did.
so many eyes to this sport. And although he's not quite in his winning ways anymore, he's still doing a million five pay-per-views every time he's out there. So still very, very beneficial. So I know the next thing I kind of wanted to get to is obviously I know you train at Agogi. That's a gym that's really started to pop off as of late. Trevor did the Contender Series, then the UFC, and he's been a massive hit. I mean, his fighting style, it's so unorthodox, but it works so well. So
It
it's
does.
really put that gym kind of on the map. But I know you said you had some friends that trained jiu-jitsu. Was that what made you choose Agogi compared to other gyms? Was just friends recommending it? Because I know now it's kind of the premier gym in Chattanooga.
Yeah. So at the time, it wasn't the premier gym. I would say I could probably say it was one of the tops, but you had Blaylock IMB, you had American Killer Bees. So you had all these other gyms, and people were telling me about them, and like people was like, Agogi got the best ground game, but they're not the best at MMA. They're not a full MMA gym. So when I went, I was like, the reason why I said let me go with ground game first. I said because I'm already a wrestler. I said let me see if I can add some jujitsu because I feel like my mindset's still very similar now. I'm like, okay, I feel like I can add some striking to help me get to a takedown. Like let me try to learn more the grappling side. So I started off with jujitsu. And then I saw Coach Larry, who was teaching striking here at Agogi, because they said Agogi didn't have good striking. And then I was like, oh, Coach Larry's doing. And then like seeing the guys that came out of Agogi that was striking, like, yeah, they do have good striking. It just like people didn't see Agogi as an MMA gym, mainly because the people here that owned it at the time, well, they still own it, but the guys here at the time, they didn't want it to be an MMA gym because they didn't want to deal with fighters. They didn't want it because, dealing with fighters compared to dealing with regular people who go to work every day and just come to do jiu-jitsu because they love it. It's two different things. So like, but as time went on, as we continue to grow, as I continue to grow throughout my career, then we was able to get Trevor to come in, and we had a lot of guys that really believed in our dream, man, and they was like, we can do something with this. This isn't just, this isn't compared to like the other guys. Some people would compare it to like other previous fighters from Chattanooga or any other regional spot. They're like, oh, they'll fight a little bit, they'll fall off, and they'll be gone, they'll be done. That wasn't my intentions. My intention was to really make something out of this. I was going to make sure I make something out of this career because I graduated at UTC with a communications degree and a sports administration degree. And I had an opportunity. I had an internship already set up at home, going back at home, like, hey, once you graduate, because I graduated college, hey, we're going to work here. And it's just especially around COVID time. So we're going to be weighted a little bit. But
Yeah.
I told my family, man, I said, I want to fight MMA. And I will say, look, a lot of people wasn't on my side when I said I was going to fight MMA. I will say that, not a lot of people was on my side, but obviously not a lot of people saw the vision at the time. I did take a chance by stepping out, going full time and like, let's go fight MMA in a sport that obviously in a place where you don't have a lot of big names, obviously in a sport where it's hard to make it sometimes. But man, I just believed in my skill set. And I was like, man, I feel like I can really do this. Like compared to, I really do. And man, it's just, I had, like I said, a lot of guys here to go get believed in me. Matt Harris, Sterling Peace, Larry Scott, all these guys believed in me, man. And I'm thankful for them.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's kind of a tale as old as time, especially in MMA, because it's become established now. But even if we look at the sport as a whole, it's very young compared to a lot of the other
It
ones. You were a
is.
football player, so you know that. So it's kind of tough, like when a parent sees, hey, when their kid comes to them and says, hey, I'm going to do this. I remember hearing Conor McGregor, his parents told him, what are you thinking? Like, there's no money in this. But
Yeah.
the trail's been blazing and you're doing great with it. So I love that. So you got a big fight coming up April 22nd, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. April 22nd. Yes, sir.
And that's at Aries
Um,
FC 16. You
yes, sir.
so you started out at Aries, it looked like, and then you went to fight on Jorge Masvidal's promotion. What brought you back
Mhm.
to Aries for this fight?
Well, so I will say mainly one of the reasons was it was hard for me to find a fight. My management team, first round management, we've been really looking for fights since the beginning of the year. And what we were trying to do is like, get on UFC Fight Pass one more time. But I came back. I mean, I had an opportunity to fight back for Aries one more time and get that chance. Like, hey, let's end it off on a good note. Because the last time I fought for Aries, I fought. They couldn't find me an opponent then. We went through 15 guys. I had to fight a heavyweight.
Yeah.
That's the only time I fought heavyweight. I had to fight a heavyweight, being like 50 pounds under him. And I, beat the heavyweight at Aries. And that was my last fight for Aries. And I was like, it's good to come back. Let's end it off one more time here in Chattanooga, a good fight, and my goal is to go in there and dominate on April 22nd. Go in there and dominate, get my hand raised, become 5-0, and let's leave this city off with on a good note. Let's leave the city off on a good note and a great win.
I love it, man. And your opponent, Caleb Crump, he's a little bit more experienced than you, and he trains at a Team Elevation. I mean, what strong things do you see in his game that you think he's obviously a great opponent, but what do you think is going to be making a tough fight out there? Or do you kind of see it like your other ones where you're kind of just going to steamroll him?
I mean, he poses threats that I feel like some of my other opponents didn't pose, but I think it allows me to show more of my game that I didn't have to show. A lot of people look at my game and see it almost as one-dimensional, but the thing is, it's like it works. It's like you got to stop me, and that's what I go into every fight with. I go into every fight saying, "Hey, you have to stop what I do." I don't ever go into a fight looking at what he does. I'm not going to be on the defense mode. Once the bell rings, once it's time enough to go, like I am on the offensive end. I'm walking you down. I'm standing in your face the whole time. I'm keeping pressure on you the whole time. So I'm going to be the one that's controlling the fight. And it just depends on wherever it goes. I don't ever predict fights, but I do feel like I'll win in a dominant fashion. Whether it be all 3 rounds or whether it be in the first round. Like I feel like I'm going to dominate the fight wherever it goes. And Caleb is a solid. He's wrestled before. He's a solid wrestler. He has a big time jiu-jitsu background. He does a lot of jiu-jitsu. So obviously I got to be mindful of a lot of things off his back and, being mindful of things he throws up in that situation. But I'm confident in my approach, man. People don't see a lot of my game because I don't give them the opportunity to see it, and I want it to be that way. I want it to be that way. Like, you don't have to know everything I got, because if you did, then heck, it'll be easy for you to study film. Like, people think, oh man, he goes in and do the same thing to everybody. Well, I want to continue to do the same thing to everybody until somebody can stop it. So, depending on whoever that opponent is, man, it could be Caleb. But even if Caleb is able to stop whatever I bring to the table on my A game per se, he's still got B, C, D, and E to worry about. And I feel like I can do all those really well. So.
And yeah, I think that's a great point. I kind of find it funny when people call fighters like yourself kind of still on the regional scene, he's one-dimensional. I'm like, these guys, you've been fighting for 3 years. You have 4 professional fights. I find it funny when they call you one-dimensional. I'm like, he hasn't really had the time to prove more. And I think you also made a good point with, if it works, like, why try something else? I was talking to Carl Williams last week ahead of his fight at UFC 287, and he said, man, I mean, my wrestling has worked every time. Why would I put myself in danger trying something else? So I think you got a great point there. There's no point in trying to get style points if it risks kind of a loss, on which in this point in your career is kind of critical. So I love that. Right. Very smart game plan for you. And
I fought some like, tougher guys and like stylistically matchup, like Wes McCracken. He trained at Wonder Boys, and like Wes, he wrestled. He trained at AKA early in his career, and he understands some good things about wrestling. I took him down. Then besides the heavyweight fight, I don't really exclude that too much. But then I fought, Justin Dorsey. He trained with the guy that used to be the head coach, wrestling coach at the America Top Team. Then my last guy, I fought Ivan Batnich. Ivan was training at AKA. He was 5-1. He takes down everybody that was getting finishes in his fight. So, and I went in there and took him down. Control the pace, and he was taking everybody down. He fought. And the same thing with Caleb. Caleb takes down everybody down. He fights. But it's different when it's my pressure. I always say this: some opponents look good when they're the bully, but when they get bullied back, how do you look? Can you fight back? And most of the time I am the bully in my fights. And a lot of people, they're like, well, what happened when you get bullied? And I was like, what people don't understand is, like, I've wrestled all my life. All right. I've went against I played against LSU, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina. I played against all those big time SEC schools. I played Division I football. I'm not scared against anyone if somebody brings the fight back to me, because I know how it feels to bring somebody to bring the fight back to you, and they're much bigger or much stronger, and I'm still finding a way to come out on top. Like, this isn't new to me. Now, yes, punches are being involved, knees are being involved, leg kicks are being involved, but I get that in training with the guys I train with the places I go and cross train at. I've trained at a strength couture. I've sparred with Sean Strickland. I sparred with Rich Curtis. I sparred with Lyoto Machida when I went to Fusion. I sparred with Phil Rowe. I sparred with all these guys, Rodolfo Vieira. Like, I've had the opportunity to go with all these guys and see what it feels like, to go amongst the best in the world, and whether I'm on my back foot or not, and a lot of those guys I've done really well with. So, earn respect from them. So you have to also look at, what works in your game. And I think a lot of time MMA fighters, they look at it and they be like, well, I need to show this off so I can try to get this, or show this off so I can do this. And like, there's no reason to show off. There's no reason to show off. Go in there, do you. Just go in there, do you, and then we'll see what happens. Like, one of my favorite fights was like Gilbert Burns, as blatant of a fight this is, but Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny. Everybody was thinking that fight was going to be a little bit of a war. It's like, oh man, Neil Magny, Gilbert Burns, that's going to be a good fight. Burns went in there and said his wife didn't want him to he didn't want to take hits. He played it smart on the feet, took him down, submitted him. Pretty easy fight, right? Yep. Why not keep doing that? Like Khamzat Chimaev. I love Khamzat Chimaev's style. To me, that's what I want my style to be. He sprints to the finish on instantly. Stands here, shoots, take it down, ground and pound you out, or submit you real quick with a darce or heading or whatever. Rear naked choke. Like, it's quick. Who doesn't want fights like that? Like, who wants the Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev wars? Like, obviously that would be awesome, and obviously as a fan, but for me as a fan, I like seeing those little dominations. I'm like, man, he looks good. Like, I like those types.
How cool was it when he did that to Kevin Holland? Like, you're just standing there with your jaw like, Kevin Holland's a very good opponent. Marvin Vettori couldn't finish him on the ground. And I think with your Gilbert Burns point, I think that fight, for a lot of us that have watched Gilbert from the beginning, Gilbert fell into the tale as old as time. You see it all the time. Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, Yoel Romero, these guys who have phenomenal ground games, they fall in love with those hands, and then they kind of get away from it. But Khamzat's a guy, he sticks to his game plan. And what I think made that Burns fight so special, I was there in Jacksonville. That arena was deafening. And what made that one so good is you had a guy on Khamzat who his offensive wrestling in MMA is probably second to none. The way he's just so offensive with it, his submission game. But then you have Burns, who's so skilled off the back. Like, those are the fights we need, because those they're always entertaining. Like, it's Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman 1. When you have two wrestlers who can't take each other down, and they're going to strike, you get an awesome fight. So I always love ones like that. And Khamzat may have not fought with the best IQ, but what I think was good about that fight too, especially with him, is we know when it comes to pure talent, Khamzat Chimaev has what it takes to be double champ, possibly triple champ. But we got to see in that fight, he has the heart of a champion as well, to come back and win that third round after being brutally dropped and stuff in the second. So that was definitely one of the better fights I've ever seen. And I was so glad I got to witness it live.
Dude, you got a chance to see a special one, man. I did a millions.com stream on that fight, and I was screaming to the top of my lungs. Because right now, if you want to see who's my favorite fighter in the UFC right now, it is Khamzat Chimaev. He is the guy I idolize right now as in style. Like, that is what I want. Like, that is I have watched so much film on Khamzat, on like how he, like, his entries, his transitions. Like, a lot of my transitions, some of them are actually very similar to him and Habib's. But I love it because it's so good. Like, he just moves, it just transitions and it just flows, and he looks for those ground and pound positions or chokes or his darces. He loves going to that darce. It's so good. And man, I'm telling you, man, like, I don't understand, like, why for me, like, DC, like, when Habib told DC, he's like, DC, you shot one time, and when you didn't get it, you stopped shooting. You just stayed on the feet. He said, when I'll shoot 25 more times to get that takedown. Like, DC, I know Stipe is a really good opponent. Stipe is a heavyweight GOAT in UFC. I give you that, but DC should have beat him not the first time, but both times. They shouldn't even been a third fight. Like DC should have been using his wrestling even more. Like, and I know as he got older, he had the back injuries and stuff. So I understand that. But I feel like a guy of that caliber, and like you say, Yoel Romero, like, why are Yoel having wars? Why are you having wars?
He was one of those guys. Like, I was talking to someone the other day when I said, if they make the Hamzat Izzy fight, Izzy's going to be in for a rude awakening. And someone was like, well, he fought Yoel Romero, and Yoel Romero won bronze in the Olympics. I said, MMA wrestling, you did traditional wrestling. You can attest to this. MMA wrestling is so different from traditional wrestling because just the chaining aspect of it, and then also the submission game. Like, I think that's what makes Hamzat so polarizing, in my opinion, at least, is you have a guy who has that skill of Khabib where he can take you down, but he hunts for finishes, which a lot of those Khabib did too near the end of his career, but there's a lot of people with that same style that don't go for the finish. And then he also talks smack. So, I mean, you're getting someone with the talent of Khabib and the trash talk, and not quite as good as Conor, but that same kind of style. And that's what I really think is going to push him to be a mega star. A lot of my friends hate me because I'm always raving about the guy. Like, I'm always saying, he's the only guy where I think if he was to fight the 170 champ, the 185 champ, and the 205 champ, he'd be a betting favorite in each fight.
Every single one. Like, tell me, I don't care I don't understand what people are thinking. I'm like, tell me, I don't see how he loses to Izzy or Pereira. Like, I understand, yes, they have the knockout power. The moment the bell rings, he is shooting. And you're telling me they're going to stop him from taking them down?
Exactly.
No.
And everyone talks about the Burns fight too with the cardio, but as someone, I know you cut some weight too. I think you can attest when you're cutting weight can affect your gas tank a little bit. And with how much he cuts to get to 170, we saw him at 185 in his first fight. I mean, he had nonstop output and he went back to his corner, wasn't even breathing heavy. So I don't think there'll be any issues at 185 for him. And I'm a big guy where I don't like when the UFC gives undeserving shots or stuff. But 185, there's no clear contender. And Alex just announced today he's moving up. I honestly, I wouldn't mind. Give me Hamzat versus Izzy in Abu Dhabi. I think that would be a great fight.
That would be a great fight. Now I know what they're talking about. They want to have Izzy and Hamzat and Costa. And I'm going to tell y'all straight up. I know people might say this is crazy, but I actually think under 2 rounds, Hamzat steamrolls Costa. Reason why I say that is because Costa, yes, he can wrestle, but like I saw him wrestle against Logan Paul. Now I understand, like you said, traditional wrestling is different. He was hard. He was struggling to chain wrestle with Logan Paul. Like, and I know Logan Paul was like a high school state champ, something like that. But like, Hamzat Chimaev don't struggle. Like I saw the wrestling match when he did it against Jack Hermanson and just made him look like a kid. Like exactly. I don't see, like, I understand Costa might be strong, but see, I've seen Costa in person when I was in Vegas. Now look, Costa is ripped, he's jacked, but he ain't all that big to me. Like, I mean, he's huge. Obviously, he's big for 185, but like he's not all that like beefy. He's not beefy as I thought he would be. The camera make him look more beefier than he actually is. So I haven't seen Hamzat in person, but if I don't think.
I met him briefly in Jacksonville, and I can just say I'm 6'3". I'm a big guy. He is massive. When I saw him in Jacksonville, my first thought was, how on earth does this guy make 170 pounds? He's that big. And he just posted something on social media the other day that he's coming in. He was 218 the other day. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. I mean, if this guy builds on that size and then cuts to middleweight, I think it's going to be kind of scary for a lot of people.
Oh, it's gonna be scary for sure, man. I'll sit here and look at the weight classes. I'm like, because I was in Vegas and I saw Michelle Pereira, and he's getting ready to fight Wonder Boy, and Wonder Boy was there as well. We was there around the time when they was filming because Trevor was fighting, and it was filming the Ultimate Fighter, so we got a chance to see Wonder Boy. We saw Conor there and Chandler and all those boys, but I was at Wonder Boy. I was like, man, I'm so much bigger than Wonder Boy. Then I seen Pereira when I go to sparring.
I've heard he cuts a massive amount of weight. He's one of those guys too.
I was like, this man looks big. Because I had sparred with Kutalaba, and Kutalaba, when he was much bigger than me, I was like, I felt like I was almost bigger than him, mass wise. Then I looked at Pereira. I said, oh my gosh. I was like, which one the 205er? Like, what in
Yep.
the world? Like, Michelle Pereira, he's about to fight Wonder Boy. I was like, this is he's gonna be so much bigger than Wonder Boy. Like,
There are some of those guys who cut that kind of weight. Like Alex is a perfect example. He's going to be going up to 205, and I think you put him in an octagon with a Jan Blachowicz or Jamal Hill, he's going to look bigger
he's
because
gonna look.
everyone I think has seen that Dominic Reyes photo, and that was him completely out of camp. I mean, out of camp, he's 230 pounds. Like he's a big
Yes.
old boy. So I think that 205 will be better for him. I'm someone who's watched Alex in glory, and I think him at 205 is better. So I'm excited to see that move up.
Mhm.
So we got a lot of great fights coming in the UFC, that's for sure. But back to your fight next week, man. I listened to you and Caleb's interview with James Lynch earlier this week, and Caleb actually said it was your team at First Round Management, your agent, that reached out to him and offered him a pretty good sum to come fight you. I mean, how hard has it been for you to find fights over this last year?
It has been really hard, man. It is. So I understand. Look, I'm not the type of guy to be like, man, everybody's scared of me, everybody this and that. I'm not going to say that, because if you look at the fighter's perspective, all right, people look at me and it's like, all right, when you look at a fighter, all right, what are my paths to victory? So, okay, I got to make sure I might have to catch a lucky knockout. If you're depending on luck to win a fight, you might not need to take that fight. And a lot of guys don't see a lot of paths to victory to beating me. Now, Caleb, he feels like he can just sub me. And I think he's going to be in for a rude awakening when he sees that on April 22nd, because I've went with some of the best, and like guys just don't sub me. And I respect his skill set. I respect everything he brings to the table, but I just don't think he'll be able to grapple with me like he thinks he can. And Caleb, he's solid, but yeah, my first round management, man, we've been going all over. We was hoping Icon was going to do another show, but obviously there were some things that was happening. I think with first round and Jorge, so we had to wait on that. Then we was trying to look at other cards. We tried to get with Titan FC. Titan FC. They're actually fighting tomorrow. I was supposed to fight on that card, but they couldn't find me an opponent in the Dominican Republic. Then I was doing Cage Fury. Couldn't find an opponent then. Also, Cage Fury has so the thing with Cage Fury, they sometimes have weird contracts. So we wanted to be mindful of that, because like my agent was saying, like, and plus Malky and Abe, they were like, man, he's only one fight away for a contender. Or
you don't want to lock yourself into a contract and then the UFC comes calling.
That's right. And then you don't want to like take that chance of, sitting here trying to fight all these multiple fights and get caught up in something. It's like, it's just better to like continue to get better and like fight sporadically throughout the year, because like, as they've seen, like, and what they've told me is what they promised me from the beginning when I first signed with them when I was 2-0 as an amateur. It was like, what we do is we get you good fights, and we get good fights that'll push you, but it's not going to take you 10, 11, 12 fights to get into the UFC. Like, you see a lot of guys, and look, and there ain't nothing wrong with that, because guess what? That's experience. But, if you feel like you're amongst that level, you're not going to be getting force fed, because it's hard. It's hard for me to find fights, but you have to also be smart on what fights you take. Like, yes, it's hard for me to find fights regionally, but I shouldn't go out there and fight a guy that's 13-0 from Russia. Like, that don't make any sense. Like, that don't make sense. So you have to be smart about which fights you take as a fighter. So you have to look at it perspectively. That's why you have a management company. Now, in my eyes, I feel like I can fight anybody. It don't matter who I fight. Like, but you have a lot of guys that I have had a lot of guys turning me down. I'll probably say out of my amateur and pro career combined, I've had over 50 guys turn me down. And it's not. I just feel like it's the matchup. If I was a guy, that would go out there and just swing and bang, I bet a lot of people would accept me. They would. Yep. But because I'm more of a heavy grappler, I take guys down. They don't get up. It's just a tough matchup for a lot of people. So unless people feel like their skill set can match with mine, they're not going to take the fight.
And so how do you get – first round management is obviously one of the top of the line when it comes. Malky's been John's guy for quite a while. So they're right at the top. I mean, it's very rare that they go after someone that's just 2-0 with no experience in UFC, Bellator, PFL. Can you kind of walk us through how that partnership came about?
Yeah. So I had just won my amateur light heavyweight championship 2-0 because it really was my first Emmy fight because my first actual Emmy fight only lasted 11 seconds. I had 11-second knockout,
Oh,
so
geez.
it didn't even last that long. And then my second one, I went against Tristan Scarborough. Went to the title. Went for the title. I beat him in the third round. Finish ground and pound. So. And I had an amazing performance. The fight looked really like it was a really good performance. And those guys like, man, Ray Horner, my first round management agent, he hit me up and he was like, man, I'm going to get this guy. He's like, hey, I want to, I like your style. I like what you bring to the table. I really see a lot in your future. And I flew out to Miami, went to first round headquarters, got a chance to meet up with all the guys and everything. And they was telling me like they don't sign many amateurs. They don't like signing really amateurs. They don't
No.
think it's really good to do that because obviously early on, especially with a lot of amateurs, it's hard to see with other amateur competition because guys just not, when you go against another amateur, a lot of these guys aren't just as good. So it's hard to see, but they just said they just saw something in me. And that was a blessing. They just saw something in me. They were skeptical at first, but it was funny because I had a fight I actually had a fight the day before I flew out to Miami. I had went on a scheduled flight, but I was like, hey, I got to fight. So I had a fight at light heavyweight, and I had knocked the guy out in 5 seconds, the fastest KO in
There
Tennessee.
we go.
So I had a 5 second finish. So even more that I was like, okay, yeah, this is the guy. We like this guy. So it was helpful to be able to sign with them at a very young career. I mean, very, very young career. Like it probably not even within like I say 6 months since my amateur actual debut, and I was signed to one of the biggest management companies in the world. And it's been a blessing ever since, man. It's been great to be with Malky. It's been great to be with Abe. It's been great to be with Ray. Ray has been so good to me, man. He's helped me out with so many things, not only fights, with sponsorships. He's going to be at this upcoming fight, man. And he's more than like an agent. He's more like a friend. He's a friend. He's a friend to me, man. He's not just my agent. We straight up talk to each other. And that's what I want with my agent, like straight up talk to you. Like, hey, it ain't no, don't sugarcoat nothing ever for me. He never sugarcoats. He just tells me the straight up truth. Sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know if I like this, Ray. And then he'd be like, well, I don't know if I like this. But that's the type of communication that you want. You don't want your agent talking to you, telling you lies, because that'll put you in a really bad position. So I'm glad that my management team tells me the truth, and they helped me out all the way up to this point.
So I know you said you fought in at heavyweight, but that wasn't really planned. You fought in at 205. You're at 185. It seems like that's going to be the weight class going forward for you. How hard of a cut is that for you? Because you're a pretty big guy, man. I mean, I see you, and I'm like, he's a big 185er. So how tough is that cut for you?
Usually I cut from so I walk around outside of camp about 217 to 220-ish. Right now I'm about like 203, 204 something because it's getting down.
Yep.
Tomorrow I start the water loading
Oh,
process.
yeah. Gotta
So
love it.
yeah, we're getting down now. So it's about that time, and man, it's not bad. The cut's been going good so far. We follow the Tyler Minton. We got Tyler Minton to do my weight cut, who does it for a lot of guys in UFC. So he's done my weight cut the last few times, and we follow his process and plan, and it just worked well. So I get the 185, 186, boom. Last fight I got the 186. So in Georgia, you get the 2-pound allowance. So I play by
Nice.
rules, man. I go, if you say 2 pounds, okay, boom, I'm right there, 186.9. Like so here in
Exactly.
Tennessee, the weight is 186. You only get 1 pound. So you'll see me right at 186, So I no reason for me to cut more than I have to. And so I'll get that 1 pound allowance. I'll get right at 186, and usually I'll shoot back up to like 205 or 207.
There we go, man. Well, Torrez, it's been awesome to have you on. I really look forward to this fight on the 22nd for you. I'm going to try my best to be there and watch it. I'm local here in Chattanooga, so I'll try and be there for sure. And I look forward to a dominant performance from you, man.
Thank you very much, brother. Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure. Do you have any sponsors or anyone you want to shout out at the end of the show?
Yes, first round management is one of them. Agogi Combatives, obviously the people that helps me out the entire gym. Agogi Armory, for sponsoring me. Scenic City Solar, and I want to thank some individual like Robert White, those guys that help sponsor me. Johnny Jones, they help sponsor me. So there's a lot of people in my life, my whole family. And like I say, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, he's the one that allows me to do this. He's my main sponsor. So I'm blessed to be able to be in this opportunity, be in this position and be able to do what I'm able to do.
Perfect, man. Well, I look forward to seeing that performance. Hopefully another dominant first round finish. And I have no doubt that you'll be in the UFC shortly.
Thank you very much, brother.
My pleasure.